Okay, our next story, Laura, has to do with autism. We hear so many stories about autism for the last while. This is looking at autism on a very different level and possibly providing some insight as to the mechanism behind it.
Yeah, this is actually a really interesting study because it's looking at autism in adults and the theory that you might be able to reverse some of the effects of autism. This came out of UC San Diego, and it's a really interesting study because Professor Robert Navow, he saw a paper from 2007 which said that children, when they get high fevers, autistic children, 83% of them come out from behind the veil. This is what parents say. They say it's like the kids are behind the veil. And about 1 to 2% of all children suffer from autistic spectrum disorder. So these high fevers make them sort of more able to communicate temporarily while they're sick.
It's almost as if they're lucid coming out of a fever. That
exactly,
idea,
yeah.
The fever is actually causing
Exactly.
it.
It's almost the opposite of the way it would work with people who don't suffer from autism. So he thought this was really, really interesting. And we always thought that autism was due to problems with synapses. So synapse is where one nerve meets another. And if it's not sending the message correctly, they think that might be the cause of autism. But he thought what happens in fevers is it's kind of like countries at war. They block off their boundaries. So one synapse doesn't actually communicate as readily with the other. One nerve cell doesn't communicate as readily. So he was wondering if maybe autism is caused by an overabundance of message, this thing called ATP, which we hear about all the time. It's kind of the energy of the cells. So what he wanted to do was try and block ATP in mice to have a look and see if this is going to cure. So he basically created autistic mice by giving the parents a virus, and then the mice are born autistic. And what he found was he used this really old drug called Suramin. It was created in 1916. It's been around for 100 years, and it was used for sleeping sickness up until basically a year ago. And it's very effective in the treatment of that. But he put it in because it blocks ATP. And what he saw, first of all, in baby mice, but now just published in adult mice, 6 months old, so the equivalent of a 30-year-old human, is that this drug actually it blocks the ATP, and it actually reduces hugely the autistic. So these mice are very antisocial. They don't want to experience anything novel. They don't want to look around the maze. And this is all sort of removed with one injection of this new drug, or this old drug, but new for autism. It's really, really exciting. It's the idea that it can be used in adults it's hugely groundbreaking.
Okay, so the really important caveat for anybody listening who may have a child or a relative who has the condition across the autistic spectrum, this is not something that has been tried in adults. It is not a good idea to experiment with these sort of drugs or try and get hold of these drugs. But it is an interesting insight as to perhaps a mechanism and perhaps because this drug has been around for so long, clinical trials may be speeded up.
Well, there's a clinical trial that they're hoping to have finished by the end of this year. So it is really exciting now. But there are caveats, like you said. I mean, this drug itself you can't use long term in adults. It causes anemia and it causes other side effects. But it's a kind of a proof of principle thing. So they're going to try this in a clinical trial by the end of the year. Hopefully they'll have results, and hopefully they'll have something in the next few years.
And this is a theory of autism that there is there is a brain that's perfectly functioning, that is perfectly sociable and so on, hidden
it's just being blocked.
So that may not end up being the case in human beings. But a really interesting study, and I suppose a potential for a remarkable breakthrough.